Why Buddhists seek refuge? The first two steps in the process of becoming a lay disciple of the Buddha are the going for refuge, sarana gamana, and the undertaking of the 5 precepts, panchasila samadhana. By the former step, a person makes the commitment to accept the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, as the guiding ideals of his life. By the latter, he expresses his determination to bring his actions into harmony with these ideals through right conduct. The following 2 tracts were written for the purpose of giving a clear and concise explanation of these 2 steps. Though they are intended principally for those who have newly embraced the Buddha's teaching, they will probably be found useful as well by long-term traditional Buddhists wanting to understand the meaning of practices with which they are already familiar, and also by those who want to know what becoming a Buddhist involves. In order to keep our treatment compact and to avoid the intimidating format of a scholastic treatise, references to source material in the tracts themselves have been kept to a minimum. Thus, we here indicate the sources upon which our account has drawn. Going for refuge is based primarily upon the standard commentarial passage on the topic, found with only minor variations in the Khuddakapatha Atthakatha, Paramatthajotika, the Digha Nikaya Atthakatha, Sumangala Vilasini, and the Majjhima Nikaya Atthakatha, Papankasudani. Going for refuge. The Buddha's teaching can be thought of as a kind of building with its own distinct foundation, stories, stairs, and roof. Like any other building, the teaching also has a door, and in order to enter it, we have to enter through this door. The door of entrance to the teaching of the Buddha is the going for refuge to the triple gem, that is, to the Buddha as the fully enlightened teacher, to the Dhamma as the truth taught by him, and to the Sangha as the community of his noble disciples. From ancient times to the present, the going for refuge has functioned as the entranceway to the dispensation of the Buddha, giving admission to the rest of the teaching from its lowermost story to its top. All those who embrace the Buddha's teaching do so by passing through the door of taking refuge, while those already committed regularly reaffirm their conviction by making the same threefold profession: Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I go for refuge to the Buddha. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. I go for refuge to the Dhamma. Sangham Saranam Gacchami. I go for refuge to the Sangha. As slight and commonplace as this step might seem, especially in comparison with the lofty achievements lying beyond, its importance should never be underestimated, as it is this act which imparts direction and forward momentum to the entire practice of the Buddhist path. Since the going for refuge plays such a crucial role, it is vital that the act be properly understood both in its own nature and in its implications for future development along the path. To open up the process of going for refuge to the eye of inner understanding, we here present an examination of the process in terms of its most significant aspects. These will be dealt with under the following 8 headings: the reasons for taking refuge, the existence of a refuge, the identification of the refugee objects, the act of going for refuge, the function of going for refuge, methods of going for refuge, the corruption and breach of the going for refuge, and the similes for the refugees. Chapter 1. The reasons for taking refuge. When it is said that the practice of the Buddha's teaching starts with taking refuge, this immediately raises an important question. The question is, what need do we have for a refuge? A refuge is a person, place, or thing giving protection from harm and danger. So when we begin a practice by going for refuge, this implies that the practice is intended to protect us from harm and danger. Our original question as to the need for a refugee can thus be translated into another question. What is the harm and danger from which we need to be protected? If we look at our lives in review, we may not see ourselves exposed to any imminent personal danger. Our jobs may be steady, our health good, our families well provided for, our resources adequate, and all this we may think gives us sufficient reason for considering ourselves secure. In such a case, the going for refuge becomes entirely superfluous. To understand the need for a refuge, we must learn to see our position as it really is. That is, to see it accurately and against its total background. From the Buddhist perspective, the human situation is similar to an iceberg. A small fraction of its mass appears above the surface. The vast substratum remains below, hidden out of view. Owing to the limits of our mental vision, our insight fails to penetrate beneath the surface crust to see our situation in its underlying depths. But there is no need to speak of what we cannot see. Even what is immediately visible to us, we rarely perceive with accuracy. The Buddha teaches that cognition is subservient to wish. In subtle ways concealed from ourselves, our desires condition our perceptions, twisting them to fit into the mold they themselves want to impose. Thus, our minds work by way of selection and exclusion. We take note of those things agreeable to our preconceptions. We blot out or distort those that threaten to throw them into disarray. From the standpoint of a deeper, more comprehensive understanding, the sense of security we ordinarily enjoy comes to view as a false security sustained by unawareness and the mind's capacity for subterfuge. Our position appears impregnable only because of the limitations and distortions of our outlook. The real way to safety, however, lies through correct insight, not through wishful thinking. To reach beyond fear and danger, we must sharpen and widen our vision. We have to pierce through the deceptions that lull us into a comfortable complacency, to take a straight look down into the depths of our existence without turning away uneasily or running after distractions. When we do so, it becomes increasingly clear that we move across a narrow footpath at the edge of a perilous abyss. In the words of the Buddha, we are like a traveler passing through a thick forest bordered by a swamp and precipice, like a man swept away by a stream seeking safety by clutching at reeds, like a sailor crossing a turbulent ocean, or like a man pursued by venomous snakes and murderous enemies. The dangers to which we are exposed may not always be immediately evident to us. Very often they are subtle, camouflaged, and difficult to detect. But though we may not see them straight away, the plain fact remains that they are there all the same. If we wish to get free from them, we must first make the effort to recognize them for what they are. This, however, calls for courage and determination. On the basis of the Buddha's teaching, the dangers that make the quest for a refugee necessary can be grouped into three general classes. 1. The dangers pertaining to the present life. 2. Those pertaining to future lives. And 3. Those pertaining to the general course of existence. Each of these in turn involves two aspects. A. An objective aspect, which is a particular feature of the world, and B. A subjective aspect, which is a corresponding feature of our mental constitution. We will now consider each of these in turn. Chapter 2. The dangers pertaining to the present life. A. Objective aspect. The most obvious danger confronting us is the sheer fragility of our physical body and its material supports. From the moment we are born, we are subject to disease, accident, and injury. Nature troubles us with disasters such as earthquakes and floods. societal existence with crime, exploitation, repression, and the threat of war. Events on the political, social, and economic fronts rarely pass very long without erupting into crisis. Attempts at reform and revolution always wind up repeating the same old story of stagnation, violence, and consequent disillusionment. Even in times of relative tranquility, the order of our lives is never quite perfect. Something or other always seems to be getting out of focus. Snags and predicaments follow each other endlessly. Even though we might be fortunate enough to escape the serious adversities, there is one we cannot avoid. This is death. We are bound to die, and with all our wealth, expertise, and power, we still stand helpless before our inevitable mortality. Death weighs upon us from the time we are born. Every moment brings us closer to the inescapable. As we are drawn along, feeling secure in the midst of our comforts, we are like a man walking across a frozen lake, believing himself safe while the ice is cracking underfoot. The dangers hanging over us are made even more problematic by their common feature of uncertainty. We have no knowledge when they will take place. If we knew calamity is going to hit, we could at least prepare in advance to resign ourselves stoically. But we do not enjoy even this much edge on the future. Because we lack the benefit of foreknowledge, our hopes stand up straight, moment after moment, coupled with a vague presentiment that any second, in a flash, they can suddenly be dashed to pieces. Our health might be stricken down by illness, our businesses fail, our friends turn against us, our loved ones die. We do not know. We can have no guarantee that these reversals will not come upon us. Even death is only certain in that we can be sure it will strike. Exactly when it will strike still remains uncertain. B. Subjective aspect. The adversities just sketched are objective features built into the world's constitution. On the one side, there is calamity, crisis, and predicament. On the other, the radical uncertainty pervading them. The subjective aspect of the danger pertaining to the present life consists in our negative response to this twofold liability. The element of uncertainty tends to provoke in us a persistent disquietude running beneath our surface self-assurance. At a deep interior level, we sense the instability of our reliances, their transience and vulnerability to change, and this awareness produces a nagging apprehensiveness which rises at times to a pitch of anxiety. The source of our disquietude we may not always be able to pinpoint, but it remains lurking in the undercurrent of the mind, an unlocalized fear that our familiar supports will suddenly be stripped away, leaving us without our usual frame of reference. This anxiety is sufficient disturbance in itself, yet often our fears are confirmed. The course of events follows a pattern of its own, independently of our will, and the two do not necessarily coincide. The world thrown up illness, loss, and death, which strike when the time is ripe. When the course of events clashes with our will, the outcome is pain and dissatisfaction. If the conflict is small, we become angry, upset, depressed, or annoyed. If it is great, we undergo anguish, grief, or despair. In either case, a fundamental disharmony emerges from the cleavage between desire and the world, and the result, for us, is suffering. The suffering that arises is not significant solely in itself. It has a symptomatic value, pointing to some more deeply grounded malady underlying it. This malady lies in our attitude towards the world. We operate out of a mental frame built up of expectations, projections, and demands. We expect reality to conform to our wishes, to submit to our mandates, to confirm our preconceptions, but this it refuses to do. When it refuses, we meet pain and disappointment, born from the conflict between expectation and actuality. To escape this suffering, one of the two must change, our will or the world. Since we cannot alter the nature of the world to make it harmonize with our will, the only alternative is to change ourselves by putting away attachment and aversion towards the world. We have to relinquish our clinging, to stop hankering and grasping, to learn to view the fluctuation of events with a detached equanimity free from the swing of elation and dejection. The mind of equanimity, poised beyond the play of worldly opposites, is the highest safety and security. But to gain this equanimity, we stand in need of guidance. The guidance available cannot protect us from objective adversity. It can only safeguard us from the dangers of a negative response, from anxiety, sorrow, frustration, and despair. This is the only protection possible, and because it grants us this essential protection, such guidance can be considered a genuine refuge. This is the first reason for going for refuge, the need for protection from negative reactions to the dangers besetting us here and now. Chapter 3. The Dangers Pertaining to Future Lives. A. Objective aspect. Our liability to harm and danger does not end with death. From the perspective of the Buddha's teaching, the event of death is the prelude to a new birth and thus the potential passageway to still further suffering. The Buddha teaches that all living beings bound by ignorance and craving are subject to rebirth. So long as the basic drive to go on existing stands intact, the individualized current of existence continues on after death, inheriting the impressions and dispositions accumulated in the previous life. There is no soul to transmigrate from one life to the next, but there is an ongoing stream of consciousness which springs up following death in a new form appropriate to its own dominant tendencies. Rebirth, according to Buddhism, can take place in any of 6 realms of becoming. The lowest of the 6 is the hells, regions of severe pain and torment where evil actions receive their due expiation. Then comes the animal kingdom where suffering prevails and brute force is the ruling power. Next is the realm of hungry ghosts, Patavisaya, shadowy beings afflicted with strong desires they can never satisfy. Above them is the human world, with its familiar balance of happiness and suffering, virtue and evil. Then comes the world of the demigods, asuras, titanic beings obsessed by jealousy and ambition. And at the top stands the heavenly worlds inhabited by the devas or gods. The first 3 realms of rebirth, the hells, the animal kingdom, and the realm of ghosts, together with the asuras, are called the evil destinations, dugati, or plane of misery, apayabhumi. They receive these names because of the preponderance of suffering found in them. The human world and the heavenly worlds are called, in contrast, the happy destinations, sugati, since they contain a preponderance of happiness. Rebirth in the evil destinations is considered especially unfortunate not only because of the intrinsic suffering they involve, but for another reason as well. Rebirth there is calamitous because escape from the evil destinations is extremely difficult. A fortunate rebirth depends on the performance of meritorious actions, but the beings in the evil destinations find little opportunity to acquire merit. Thence, the suffering in these realms tends to perpetuate itself in a circle very difficult to break. The Buddha says that if a yoke with a single hole was floating at random on the sea, and a blind turtle living in the sea were to surface once every 100 years, the likelihood of the turtle pushing his neck through the hole in the yoke would be greater than that of a being in the evil destinations regaining human status. For these 2 reasons, because of their inherent misery and because of the difficulty of escaping from them, Rebirth in the evil destinations is a grave danger pertaining to the future life, from which we need protection. B. Subjective aspect. Protection from a fall into the plane of misery cannot be obtained from others. It can only be obtained by avoiding the causes leading to an unfortunate rebirth. The cause for rebirth into any specific plane of existence lies in our karma, that is, our willed actions and volitions. Karma divides into two classes, the wholesome and the unwholesome. The former are actions motivated by detachment, kindness, and understanding. The latter actions motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion. These two classes of karma generate rebirth into the two general planes of existence. Wholesome karma brings rebirth into the happy destinations. Unwholesome karma brings rebirth into the evil destinations. We cannot obliterate the evil destinations themselves. They will continue on as long as the world itself endures. To avoid rebirth in these realms, we can only keep watch over ourselves by controlling our actions so that they do not spill over into the unwholesome courses leading to a plunge into the plane of misery. But to avoid generating unwholesome karma, we need help, and that for two principal reasons. First, we need help because the avenues of action open to us are so varied and numerous that we often do not know which way to turn. Some actions are obviously wholesome or unwholesome, but others are difficult to evaluate, throwing us into perplexity when we run up against them. To choose correctly, we require guidance, the clear indications of one who knows the ethical value of all actions and the pathways leading to the different realms of being. The second reason we need help is because, even when we can discriminate right from wrong, we are often driven to pursue the wrong against our better judgment. Our actions do not always follow the counsel of our dispassionate decisions. They are often impulsive, driven by irrational urges we cannot master or control. By yielding to these drives, we work our own harm even while helplessly watching ourselves do so. We have to gain mastery over our mind, to bring our capacity for action under the control of our sense of higher wisdom. But this is a task which requires discipline. To learn the right course of discipline, we need the instructions of one who understands the subtle workings of the mind and can teach us how to conquer the obsessions which drive us into unhealthy self-destructive patterns of behavior. Because these instructions and the one who gives them help protect us from future harm and suffering, they can be considered a genuine refuge. This is the second reason for going for refuge, the need to achieve mastery over our capacity for action so as to avoid falling into the evil destinations in future lives. Chapter 4. The Dangers Pertaining to the General Course of Existence. A. Objective aspect. The perils to which we are exposed are immensely greater than those just discussed. Beyond the evident adversities and misfortunes of the present life and the risk of a fall into the plane of misery, there is a more fundamental and comprehensive danger running through the entire course of worldly existence. This is the intrinsic unsatisfactoriness of samsara. Samsara is the cycle of becoming, the round of birth, aging, and death, which has been revolving through beginningless time. Rebirth does not take place only once, leading to an eternity in the life to come. The life process repeats itself over and over, the whole pattern spelling itself out again and total with each new turn. Each single birth issues in decay and death. Each single death gives way to a new birth. Rebirth can be fortunate or miserable, but wherever it occurs, no halt is made to the revolution of the wheel. The law of impermanence imposes its decree upon the entire domain of sentient life. Whatever arises must eventually cease. Even the heavens provide no outlet. Life there also ends when the karma that brought a heavenly birth is exhausted, to be followed by a re-arising in some other plane, perhaps in the miserable abodes. Because of this pervasive transience, all forms of conditioned existence appear to the eye of wisdom as essentially dukkha, unsatisfactory, or suffering. None of our supports and reliances is exempt from the necessity to change and pass away. Thence what we resort to for comfort and enjoyment is in reality a concealed form of suffering. What we rely on for security is itself exposed to danger. What we turn to for protection itself needs to be protected. Nothing that we want to hold to can be held onto forever without perishing. It is crumbling away. It is crumbling away. Therefore, it is called the world. Youth issues in old age, health in sickness, life in death. All union ends in separation and in the pain that accompanies separation. But to understand the situation in its full depth and gravity, we must multiply it by infinity. From time without beginning, we have been transmigrating through the round of existence, encountering the same experiences again and again with vertiginous frequency: birth, aging, sickness and death, separation and loss, failure and frustration. Repeatedly, we have made the plunge into the plane of misery. Times beyond counting, we have been animal, ghost, and denizen of hell. Over and over, we have experienced suffering, violence, grief, despair. The Buddha declares that the amount of tears and blood we have shed in the course of our samsaric wandering is greater than the waters in the ocean. The bones we have left behind could form a heap higher than the Himalaya mountains. We have met this suffering countless times in the past, and as long as the causes of our cycling in samsara are not cut off, we risk meeting more of the same in the course of our future wandering. B. Subjective aspect. To escape from these dangers, there is only one way of release: to turn away from all forms of existence, even the most sublime. But for the turning away to be effective, we must cut off the causes that hold us in bondage to the round. The basic causes that sustain our wandering in samsara lie within ourselves. We roam from life to life, the Buddha teaches, because we are driven by a profound, insatiable urge for the perpetuation of our being. This urge the Buddha calls bhavatanha, the craving for existence. While craving for existence remains operative, even if only latently, death itself is no barrier to the continuation of the life process. Craving will bridge the vacuum created by death, generating a new form of existence determined by the previously accumulated storage of karma. Thus, craving and existence sustain each other in succession. Craving brings forth a new existence. The new existence gives the ground for craving to resume its search for gratification. Underlying this vicious nexus which links together craving and repeated existence is a still more primordial factor called ignorance, avijja. Ignorance is a basic unawareness of the true nature of things, a beginningless state of spiritual unknowing. The unawareness operates in two distinct ways. On one side, it obscures correct cognition. On the other, it creates a net of cognitive and perceptual distortions. Owing to ignorance, we see beauty in things that are really repulsive, permanence in the impermanent, pleasure in the unpleasurable, and selfhood in selfless, transient, unsubstantial phenomena. These delusions sustain the forward drive of craving. Like a donkey chasing a carrot suspended from a cart, dangling before its face, we rush headlong after the appearances of beauty, permanence, pleasure, and selfhood, only to find ourselves still empty-handed, more tightly entangled in the samsaric round. To be freed from this futile and profitless pattern, it is necessary to eradicate the craving that keeps it in motion, not merely temporarily, but permanently and completely. To eradicate craving, the ignorance which supports it has to be dislodged. For as long as ignorance is allowed to weave its illusions, the ground is present for craving to revive. The antidote to ignorance is wisdom, panya. Wisdom is the penetrating knowledge which tears aside the veils of ignorance in order to see things as they really are. It is not mere conceptual knowledge, but an experience that must be generated in ourselves. It has to be made direct, immediate, and personal. To arouse this wisdom, we need instruction, help, and guidance. Someone who will teach us what we must understand and see for ourselves, and the methods by which we can arouse the liberating wisdom that will cut the cords binding us to repeated becoming. Since those who give this guidance and the instructions themselves provide protection from the perils of transmigration, they can be considered a genuine refuge. This is the third reason for going for refuge: the need for deliverance from the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of samsara. Chapter 5. The existence of a refuge. To realize that the human situation impels the search for a refuge is a necessary condition for taking refuge, but is not in itself a sufficient condition. To go for refuge, we must also become convinced that an effective refuge actually exists. But before we can decide on the existence of a refuge, we first have to determine for ourselves exactly what a refuge is. The dictionary defines refuge as a shelter or protection from danger and distress, a person or place giving such protection, and an expedient used to obtain such protection. This tallies with the explanation of the Pali word sarana, meaning refuge, which has come down in the Pali commentaries. The commentaries gloss the word sarana with another word meaning to crush, himsati, explaining that when people have gone for refuge, then by that very going for refuge, it crushes, dispels, removes, and stops their fear, anguish, suffering, risk of unhappy rebirth and defilement. These explanations suggest two essential qualifications of a refuge. 1. First, a refugee must be itself beyond danger and distress. A person or thing subject to danger is not secure in itself and thus cannot give security to others. Only what is beyond fear and danger can be confidently relied upon for protection. 2. Second, the purported refuge must be accessible to us. A state beyond fear and danger that is inaccessible is irrelevant to our concerns and thus cannot function as a refuge. In order for something to serve as a refuge, it must be approachable, capable of giving protection from danger. From this abstract determination of the qualifications of a refuge, we can return to the concrete question at hand. Does there exist a refuge able to give protection from the three types of dangers delineated above, from anxiety, frustration, sorrow, and distress in the present life, from the risk of an unhappy destination after death, and from continued transmigration in samsara? The task of working out an answer to this question has to be approached cautiously. We must recognize at once that an objectively verifiable, publicly demonstrable answer cannot be given. The existence of a refuge, or the specification of a particular refuge, cannot be proven logically in an irrefutable manner binding on all. The most that can be done is to adduce cogent grounds for believing that certain persons or objects possess the qualifications of a refuge. The rest depends upon faith, a confidence born out of trust, at least until that initial assent is transformed into knowledge by means of direct experience. But even then, the verification remains inward and personal, a matter of subjective appropriation rather than of logical proof or objective demonstration. From the Buddhist perspective, there are three refugees which together make available complete protection from danger and distress. These three are the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. The three are not separate refugees, each sufficient in itself. Rather, they are interrelated members of a single effective refuge, which divides into three by way of a distinction in the characteristics and functions of its members. Why such a distinction is necessary becomes clear if we consider the order in which the three are presented. The Buddha comes first because he is a person. Since we are persons, we naturally look to another person for guidance, inspiration, and direction. When it is ultimate deliverance that is at stake, what we look for in the first place is a person who has himself reached complete freedom from danger and can lead us to the same state of safety. This is the Buddha, the enlightened one, who comes first in the triad for the reason that he is the person who discovers, achieves, and proclaims the state of refuge. In the second place, we need that state of refuge itself, the state beyond fear and danger. Then we need a path leading to this goal, and also we need a set of instructions guiding us along the path. This is the Dhamma, which, as we will see, has this threefold denotation. Then, in the third place, we need persons who began like ourselves, as ordinary people troubled by afflictions, and by following the way taught by the guide reached the state of safety beyond fear and danger. This is the Sangha, the community of spiritual persons who have entered the path, realized the goal, and can now teach the path to others. Within the triad, each member works in harmony with the other two to make the means of deliverance available and effective. The Buddha serves as the indicator of refuge. He is not a savior who can bestow salvation through the agency of his person. Salvation or deliverance depends upon us, upon our own vigor and dedication in the practice of the teaching. The Buddha is primarily a teacher, an expounder of the path, who points out the way we ourselves must tread with our own energy and intelligence. The Dhamma is the actual refuge. As the goal of the teaching, the Dhamma is the state of security free from danger. As the path, it is the means for arriving at the goal. And as the verbal teaching, it is the body of instructions describing the way to practice the path. But to make effective use of the means at our disposal, we need the help of others who are familiar with the path. Those who know the path make up the Sangha, the helpers in finding refuge, the union of spiritual friends who can lead us to our own attainment of the path. This triadic structure of the three refugees can be understood with the aid of a simple analogy. If we are ill and want to get well, we need a doctor to diagnose our illness and prescribe a remedy. We need medicine to cure our illness, and we need attendants to look after our requirements. The doctor and attendants cannot cure us. The most they can do for us is to give us the right medicine and make sure that we take it. The medicine is the actual remedy which restores our health. Similarly, when seeking relief from suffering and distress, we rely on the Buddha as the physician who can find out the cause of our illness and show us the way to get well. We rely on the Dhamma as the medicine which cures our afflictions, and we rely on the Sangha as the attendants who will help us take the medicine. To get well, we have to take the medicine. We can't just sit back and expect the doctor to cure us all by himself. In the same way, to find deliverance from suffering, we have to practice the Dhamma, for the Dhamma is the actual refuge which leads to the state of deliverance.